Hello, I'm Craig Harmon of Harmony Music, and I wanted to share some thoughts about how to organize your music ministry. Now, this is a really broad topic, and I want to speak to some specific issues on physical organization of music, equipment, and then what to do to get rid of some things that you don't need. The church is notorious for hanging on to things for probably a lot longer than it needs to be hung on to. And especially for us as musicians, we tend to be not the most organized, to be very honest. Um, Sometimes that can be used as an excuse. Actually, a lot of times it can be used as an excuse. And so I'm hoping to share some thoughts and ideas that will connect with you and give you some ideas and jumpstart some opportunities to be organized. One of the things that when I first got married, my wife and I liked to watch was a show on TLC called Clean Sweep. And one of the things this show did is it took one or two rooms in a house and it would pull everything out. And these rooms were usually the most cluttered rooms you could imagine. And it was going through and figuring out what it was that you have a need for. What are some things that you're hanging on to just for the sake of sentimentality? And then going through and reorganizing that space. And I think a lot of times that can work well for us in the church when we have choral music. Maybe you've had music from five or six purchased by five or six different directors or have been donated by many different people. There is a life for music, and yes, I mean you have Bach and other styles of music that are still in use today, but for choral music it can be used and it can serve a purpose, but then sometimes you may be going in a different direction. And so it's trying to figure out what to do with all of this. And so I first want to talk about that physical storage. That's probably one of the hardest things right off the bat for church musicians. Hopefully, you've already got something in place. Hopefully, you've already come into a situation where things are fairly well organized and fairly well maintained. If not, then you've got some things to think about. The first thing is, how are you going to store the music? Are you going to store it on shelves? Are you going to store it in filing cabinets? What is it that you are going to use to store it? Because you don't want piles of books and piles of music everywhere. You want to have some organization because when you're organized, not only do you know what you have, you know where it is, you're able to keep it usable. And that's really important. So that's the first thing. How am I storing it? Then the next question is, am I going to have a librarian? One of the things that being in smaller churches for me that has been kind of a challenge is it's kind of been expected that I do it all. And I'm blessed in the congregation that I'm currently at that I have a volunteer who's willing to take on sorting and organizing and filing music. This is a huge time consuming task. And so if you can find one or two or more people to help volunteer to coordinate that and keep it up to date, that work that you do in getting things organized will be worth it in the long run. It doesn't work well to start off getting things organized and then not maintain it and not keep up with it, because it's like, you're starting a diet for 2 days and then you get off that diet. So you want to keep up with it. You want to be consistent. You want to really be able to build up that storage and that usefulness, that organization that you've already put in place. Finally, then, how do you keep track of what you have? Okay, you've got it in a filing cabinet, let's say. Now you've got it all alphabetized. How do you know where everything is? One of the things that I've found, which is a great resource, and everyone pretty much has access to it, is a spreadsheet. I use Excel, but what you can do is you can create different categories. What I usually do is title of the piece, composer, voicing, and then church season, whether it's a Christmas song, whether it's an Advent or Lent or whatever season it is. And then you can also use different notes of, hey, I really like this piece, or I really want to use this piece next Christmas, helping you to kind of keep track of those things. With a spreadsheet, then you can sort by if you need an SAB piece, if you need Christmas pieces, you can sort just by that category and then be able to say, oh, I have 20 Christmas pieces, or I have 30 general pieces, or I have five titles or five arrangements of the benediction. So you have an idea as to what you've got, and then you know what you can use. Another category that I did add as well that I think is helpful is the last time it was shared in worship, the last time it was sung. Because I think over time that can help too, to say, oh, this one hasn't been used for a while, or this one we sang last year. Oh, this one we sang the last 3 years in a row. Which that's not a bad thing, but it's good to note, especially then if there is transition over time, then you know how often, how recently things were done. Moving on to the storage of equipment. This is probably one of the hardest things in the church because space is limited. And a lot of times, storage for music equipment and music things tends to take a back burner. And a lot of times, it's probably some of the bigger things physically to store in the church, whether that's handbells and handbell tables and pads, whether that's obviously choral music, whether that's music stands, microphone cables, microphone cords, all of those things. How do you do that? Where does it go? I could spend a lot of time just focusing on all of those specific details, but I'll say this in a broad sense. Make sure that whatever you do has some organization to it. For handbells, if you store pencils all together, if you store clips all together, finding that opportunity to really create some organization within the chaos of storage and the chaos of usage of space. Because a lot of times, I mean, even in our own house, we struggle with that we have so many things, but when we organize and we put them in specific places, it feels sometimes like we have more physical space. And I think that's always a challenge, is how do you make the best use of that physical space. So when you're looking to organize things, it's really helpful to be able to find a specific place. Keep all the handbell storage together. Keep all the music stands together, but try and keep it in an accessible place as well. And that's another challenge too, is where are you going to store it and how close is it to where you need it? If your sanctuary and your rehearsal space are in two different areas, do you have some stored, so like for stands, if you have some stored in your rehearsal space and some stored in the sanctuary, so that way you don't have to carry them back and forth. That's a decision that you can make based on space and your needs. But those are things to think of when you're organizing. Then comes the biggest challenge. How do you get rid of things? We like to hang on to things, whether it's in our own lives. We have a sentimental value equated to things, and especially when it comes to music and equipment, it's expensive. If you're looking at a piece of choral music, you're looking at a piece of music that's probably $1.50 to $3, maybe even $4. When you multiply that times 25, 30, 40, for or however size your group is, that's a lot of money, and you don't really want to be throwing that out. But you don't want to be storing it if you don't have a use for it and you don't see yourself using it in 5 years or 10 years. Um, so, what can you do? Well, there's some different resources out there. The first and easiest is find a local church, small church, medium sized church, whatever church in your area that's in need of choral music or handbell music or whatever the case is, whatever you have that you're needing to get rid of. You don't want to dump really torn and tattered music. If that's the case, then yes, you probably want to throw it out. But most smaller churches don't have a specific budget for physical music, and so they're the ones that would just be so thankful and appreciative. If you don't know of any, there's a couple resources online that you can use. Choralnet.org is just a great website in and of itself, to be able to network with other choir directors, musicians, to just build up those ideas and resources. But there is a space there where you can share and give away music. And with that, if you don't find somebody local, obviously there would be the issue of shipping, but those are details that you can work out. There are a couple other websites that actually will buy your used music and sell it. That is youngsmusic.com, youngsmusic, YOUNGS music.com, and rejoicemusic.net. Now, these are new to me. I just found out about them recently, but I'm interested in looking at those and seeing what could be done, because I think that's a great opportunity to be able to put that music in the hands of somebody who wants it and can use it. Because we are limited in how often we can use a piece of music or what we have based on our library. If you have 350 titles in your library, you might not need that many. Or you may see some that just kind of need to be purged, and that's a good thing over time. I mean, in life, that's what we do. We move to a bigger house, and we kind of downsize and get new things to move in, or we downsize and physically downsize and move to a smaller house, or or things like that. And so in music ministry, that's the same type of thing. One of the things that I see so often is things that hang around that are broken. Again, it's that idea that if something is broken or it's been donated, let's say, um, and there's really not a use for it, like an amplifier or a keyboard. I'm thinking the bigger things. Throw it out. Or if you want to figure out how much it's going to cost to repair it, if it's worth repairing. All too often, I've seen things that just don't work or will sort of be on their last legs, and because Aunt Tilly donated it, we have to use it. Don't. Just get rid of it. It's not worth the space to store something that's broken. It's just taking up space. I always look at it this way. Do I want it in my house? Would I want to store this in my house? Would I see a need for it in my life? If I'm using an amplifier or things like that, do I want to have something that's broken? Or to think about, even if you've got a piano in your church basement that you don't have events or activities in your church basement anymore, do you really need a piano? Maybe, maybe not. Then you also have the cost of maintaining it. So there are options that you can do with things like that, whether it's to say free to anybody who wants it, take it, or again, asking for a donation for it, $50, $100. There might be somebody interested in that. Same thing with choral robes. I've been in churches that have had robes that I don't see a need for robes because the choir is singing from the balcony and they're not really even seen. So again, there's different resources, like ChoralNet is one of them, that you can sell or give away your choral robes. So it's really a challenge to figure out how best to be organized. This can be a very daunting task, and especially when you're taking it on yourself. You're probably saying, "I'm so busy, I don't have time to do all of this." No, you don't. But if you ask for help and you recruit two or three or four or even more other people and say, okay, here's what we need to do, figure out the tasks ahead of time, delegate the tasks, it will go much faster than you doing it yourself. So asking for help is essential, because if you try to do it yourself, it's going to take you a long time to do it, unless you've got nothing else to do with your time. But I'm guessing that most of you are very busy. And so having those extra sets of hands, going through cataloging, numbering, counting, sorting music, that makes the challenge go so much faster. So I hope this has served as a help for you. I hope that you're able to become better organized, or if you are already organized, I hope this serves as an encouragement for you to continue to be organized, be diligent about it so that things are in their place, so that they're kept well, so that they're usable, so that they're able to be organized, and so you know where they are. So I look forward to continuing this conversation. If you have any questions, click on the Contact Us button on the website and email me, and I'll be happy to continue that conversation with you. Thank you.